Few things get us amped up for college football, like seeing the betting lines released today, courtesy FanDuel. And so we will review and we will get excited. We will get fired up and pumped up. And just imagine sitting on our rear ends on the couch in front of the TV, soaking up college football once again. Welcome to the Voice of College Football on a Wednesday afternoon. And our Wednesdays are typically full of college football live streams. Ohio State, Oklahoma, Michigan, Florida State, and Miami. But we thought we'd jump on here midday to talk college football betting lines. And again, those were released, I believe, earlier today on FanDuel. And so we will get right to them. First and foremost, we want to let you know that we've got other shows coming up today. And even though I mentioned all those other live streams that are typically on Wednesday, Oklahoma was actually this week on Wednesday, and we have no Miami show tonight. We've got a bye week for Miami, at least the Wednesday night show, but you Miami football fans and everyone that likes to join us on our Miami channel for the two live streams that we do each week, keep in mind that if we cancel one, we still have the other. So Thursday night for Miami football talk on the Hurricanes channel. But today we delivered Ohio State football talk live at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So check out that live stream over on the Ohio State channel. And then a little bit later, we've got Michigan live at 5:30, Florida State at 6. All right. Grab the Amazon link in the description section of all the videos. Keep it somewhere where you will remember it and see it and use it. Because why not? Same shopping experience. Doesn't cost you a penny. Doesn't change your shopping experience in any way. You just basically access Amazon through our link. Give us a little bit of credit for it. Don't send that entire bill to Amazon. Doesn't cost you a penny. Give us 2-3%, something in that range, and we're all happy. And we've got a lot of great announcements coming your way here at the Voice of College Football very soon. Very soon. A lot of good ideas out there. I came up with a few, very few. Most of the good ideas around this place come from other people, come from you, basically. They come from you. And I recognize good ideas is what I do. All right. Let's pull up the betting lines for starting in week 1. Not every game in college football was released. I think they've just released maybe about 20 games, 20 of the bigger games or some of the earlier games in college football, although they take it all the way to the final week of the season. And of course, we have dropped the link in the live chat for you to join us here at the Voice of College Football. Give me a call. Let me know what you think about this and anything concerning college football as we hope to gather up some folks to talk football this afternoon. So this is what we've got, again, courtesy the fine folks at FanDuel. I hope everyone can see that okay. August 26th games, week 0 games. So these August 26th week 0 games are typically some lousy games that I'm excited about because I just get to watch football, but they are never the kind of games that I would watch if it was any other week of the season. But on that particular day, give me a game, give me anybody. And we have had a Big Ten opener the last 2 years with Illinois, Nebraska 2 years ago, and Nebraska Northwestern, of course, over in Ireland this past season. But now we've got some interesting, intriguing matchups, especially that second game. But first, we'll go to Navy and Notre Dame. Irish and Sam Hartman as a 17.5-point favorite against the Navy midshipmen. And I believe that game's being played. Help me out. It's not in Ireland, but it is an overseas game somewhere. I'll have to look that up. So Navy Notre Dame, Navy, of course, with the new head coach, Ken Niumatalolo, ousted. I was a bit surprised by that. He has been the most successful Navy coach since at least the early 60s, had a 15 or 16-year career there at Navy, but after another 4-8 season, he's gone. And, of course, taking on Notre Dame, the Irish, a healthy favorite there at 17.5. We will see what happens to that line as we get closer. Of course, Notre Dame with a new offensive coordinator as they have elevated their offensive line coach. And again, Sam Hartman and Tyler Buckner will have something to say, I believe, about that quarterback competition, but it should be Hartman lining up against Navy. Then we've got this Colorado TCU matchup, which would normally be a snooze fest. Well, again, not for us geeks, but for just about everybody else. But what has happened in a year? So these two teams played in week 1 or week 2, I believe week 2 of 2022. And this is before we knew what TCU was going to be. And of course, we knew Colorado was awful, and they proved to be even worse than anybody anticipated at 1-11. They were the worst team in the Power 5 last year. TCU won the game by 4 scores. Nobody paid that much attention. Lo and behold, TCU marches on to a college football playoff appearance and the national championship game. Colorado continues to just throw out misery every week on any football field in which they encountered. But that misery has resulted in hiring Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. And so this matchup suddenly has a lot of juice behind it as Colorado lost this game at home against TCU last year in Sonny Dykes before we knew Sonny Dykes was going to be a national championship game coach. And now TCU gets the second of the home and home series at home against Colorado and Deion Sanders on August 26th. So college football doesn't have to wait long to get a look at Deion Sanders as a Power 5 coach as they go to work week 0, Colorado taking on TCU. Then we move on to week 1. And again, we've got a nice little matchup here, and I mentioned this on the Spurs Up show with Chris Phillips yesterday that I like this matchup. North Carolina, South Carolina. This series is not played every year, but they play frequently. I remember Sam Howell's coming out party against South Carolina as a true freshman, week 1, with a fourth quarter comeback, and North Carolina won that game. They played in 2015 when Marquise Williams at quarterback for UNC and Ryan Switzer at wide receiver, Elijah Hood and company would eventually take North Carolina to the ACC championship game against Clemson, almost win that game, finish the regular season 11-1, but who'd they lose to? They lost to a pretty lousy South Carolina team that I believe finished at 4-8. Let's see, 2015. Yes, I believe they were a 4-8 football team, beat North Carolina in week 1. North Carolina goes off to an 11-1 season, but South Carolina won the game. And again, this is just a nice little regional feel. ACC, SEC. Of course, Drake May is being talked up huge, and rightfully so to a certain extent, but he finished poorly. Good bowl game against Oregon for the most part, but the 3 previous games, he was not good. But of course, that was his first season, much anticipated there with Drake May leading North Carolina and Spencer Rattler back for South Carolina as the Gamecocks finished at 8-5 this past season, North Carolina at 9-5. And right now we have the Heels playing in Charlotte as a 1.5-point favorite against the Gamecocks. We'll take your comments and questions, obviously, but also keep in mind that we've dropped the link in the live chat for you to join the show. So please join us right there. You can call in. Again, I will drop the link back in the live chat. All right, September 2nd, huge game in Orlando. 1 year ago, these two got together in New Orleans, and it was a heck of a game. Florida State outplayed LSU in Brian Kelly's debut with LSU. And Florida State pretty much had control of the game, just outplayed LSU most of the way, but they were looking to wrap it up. They inexplicably ran a running play when they could have knelt down. Or no, they should have just anyway. They decided to pitch the ball is what they decided to do. That's right. They pitched the ball inside the LSU 2 to close out the game. They fumbled. LSU went on a 99-yard drive at the Superdome, opening weekend of the season, and should have tied the game to send it into overtime, but the place kicker missed the extra point. Florida State escaped. And look at this. A 1-point game in 2022, and look at what FanDuel and the odds makers are looking at in 2023. A 1-point game. Florida State now a 1-point favorite against LSU in Orlando. So they are not playing a home-and-home series. They're playing a kind of close to home series, New Orleans and Orlando. And, of course, Florida State, kind of the chic pick across the country to elevate big, coming off 6 consecutive wins. Jordan Travis back at quarterback. Most of their team, for as much shakeup and turnover as there is in college football, Florida State brings back a lot of folks. Jared Verse, one of the best defensive players in the nation, coming back, loaded at wide receiver. Trey Benson at running back, 1,000-yard rusher. Florida State, LSU. Of course, the Tigers won the SEC Western Division, and Jaden Daniels is a Heisman candidate, and so is Jordan Travis. Big matchup, LSU, Florida State in Orlando. So that is a Saturday. Let's see. I don't know that we can trust the times on these games. I don't believe so. Unless the times are under the matchup. They must be under the matchup. Yes. So I guess we can trust the times. We've got Navy and Notre Dame on that week 0 Saturday at 12:30 Eastern. That's probably an NBC game. Colorado TCU at noon. The next Saturday, South Carolina, North Carolina at noon. And again, I don't know that we can, maybe this is a guesstimation on the times. So then we've got week 2 matchup. And of course, this is huge. Texas played a heck of a game in week 2 with Quinn Ewers at quarterback against Bama. They outplayed Bama, significantly outplayed them, but Bama pulled it out. They made the plays in the clutch. There was a whiff of a sack that would have ended the game, but Bama kicked the game-winning field goal, won the game by 1. Now they come back to Tuscaloosa in a home-and-home series, and of course, Texas is only 1 year away from playing in the SEC. Bama, an 8.5-point favorite. We know Texas has Quinn Ewers at quarterback. They do lose their 2 great backs in Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson. They've got maybe the best wide receiver room outside of Ohio State in the nation. Bama will have to settle on a quarterback with Ty Simpson in the mix, along with Jalen Milroe, who got some time in relief of Bryce Young last year. Needs to pick it up as a passer. Bama, Texas, huge game. 1 season before. Texas will play Bama. Probably not every year in the SEC. Probably won't be one of their designated opponents year after year after year after year. But you got to think Texas and Bama will get together probably every other year if the SEC adopts that 3-6-6 model where you play 3 common opponents every year and then you split the rest of the conference and see everybody else every other year. All right, then we move it on to more games in week 2. And so Primetime meets TCU on the road. We'll see how that works out. And then Colorado turns around and plays Nebraska in Boulder. Colorado swept this series against Scott Frost right at the beginning of Scott Frost's tenure at Nebraska. It might have been his first season. They played 2 down-to-the-wire games. Colorado took advantage of Nebraska special teams gaffes all over the place, which was obviously the precursor to Scott Frost's era at Nebraska. And the Buffs won both of those games. Now we've got a completely different cast of characters with Deion Sanders and Matt Rule coaching the Huskers. So Nebraska at Colorado, and you talk about some line changes early. So consider this. Colorado's I believe it was a 14-point dog against TCU. Let's see. Colorado, 17.5. So the perception on Colorado football is going to change significantly in the first 2 weeks of the season. If they come out and they're the same team that they were last year, which of course we know that they're not, they have a coach who has recruited so well, brought in just an upgrade of talent, and most of that through the transfer portal as well. So Colorado's going to be better. They're going to be more competitive. There's no way they're losing every week by 45 points like they did last season. But are they going to win games, and how competitive will they be? Nobody expects TCU to be a national championship contender this year. So let's say Colorado goes out there, plays close against TCU on the road, then people are going to obviously take them seriously. If they're able to split these games and maybe knock off Nebraska at home as a 7-point dog, then we've got something going. We've got something to talk about with Deion Sanders. But 2 challenging games for Colorado. I love it right out of the gate, taking on TCU, taking on Nebraska. And again, I believe the line movement on this game is going to be significant because Vegas needs to feel out Colorado. They're going to feel everybody out the first week or two of the season, of course, but especially a program like Colorado with all that turnover at the top, and just trying to figure out, is this going to be the breakout team this year? I don't think they're going to be a breakout team. I think they're just going to be so much better coaching staff, better coach. And then on top of that, just an influx of talent. And how can you be worse than Colorado was last season? And still good enough to beat Cal. Now let's see. We've got another matchup. We got a lot of matchups this season where we had a lot of home and home scheduled, and we saw the first half of the home and home last season. And now we see the second part of the home and home. And of course, please join us here at the Voice of College Football. I am dropping the link back into the live chat. So this is about the only thing I don't like about the schedule in general this season, looking at it from a national perspective, is we've got all these home and home series, and just about all of them had the first matchup last season. So we're just seeing the same 2 teams play this season. TCU, Colorado, we already saw. LSU, Florida State's another one. Texas, Alabama's another one. And I am hyped for all those games, but they're not new matchups. And here's another not new matchup. Texas A&M beat Miami, and none of us knew how bad these 2 teams were when they played. They played in week 3. Texas A&M had just lost that debacle of a game against App State at home. Miami looked pretty marginal in its first 2 outings, but didn't play anyone. And then Miami went out to Texas A&M. The 2 teams got together. And again, we didn't know how miserable they would be, but we should have gotten an indication from that game because it was 17-9, and just a lot of bad offense between both teams. They get together again, this time in Coral Gables, Texas A&M, and new offensive coordinator Bobby Petrino taking on Mario Cristobal and company, and new coordinators on both sides of the ball for the Canes, of course, as just announced here in the last couple weeks, as they were able to plunder a couple of just hired assistants at other schools. So Texas A&M, Miami, who's going to improve here? Oh man, I keep promising this video, and I'm going to deliver it because I just think this is fascinating. 27 teams last year in the Power 5 out of 65, 27. increased or decreased their win totals by at least 3. So don't necessarily expect what we saw out of teams last year to be what we're going to see this year. Meaning, for as much as Jimbo Fisher's catching hell from everyone, and rightfully so, don't be surprised. I'm not predicting this. My predictions will come out in August, but don't be surprised based on what I just laid out for you if Texas A&M is not, let's say, an 8-4 football team this year after going 5-7. Don't be surprised if Miami's not an 8-4 team after going 5-7 last year. Don't be surprised if these two, I don't expect them just to take off and be a playoff contender, but that there's not some reasonable level of improvement. All right, let's size up the next 2 matchups here. We go to the 3:30 window on week 2. And again, week 2 is typically a great window for college football because we usually only have so many teams that get together on week 1, and a lot of them like to play and schedule that one cupcake in week 1 and then the difficult week 2 opponent. So week 2 is typically loaded, and we will size this one up after we take our first call of the day. The real MVP's here on the Voice of College Football. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How about you, Mark?
I am good.
Oh my goodness, Mark. You projecting Texas A&M to go 8-4?
Is that what I said?
No, you said don't be surprised though.
Yeah, that's not a projection. That's
Okay,
a
well,
don't be surprised if they go 8-4.
I mean, isn't that basically the standard of what they've been at for the last half decade? I know
Yeah.
last year was an aberration.
Ever since they joined the conference, that's what they've been.
I mean, that would be like saying what? Don't be surprised if Iowa has a good defense and a bad offense. I mean, it's not
Well,
exactly a revelation.
I'm just saying that they may not stay as bad as they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they can be much worse than they were last year, though. Is my point. I mean, I think they were just so bad. I mean, the only way they've got to go is basically up.
Well, I think they've got enough capable teams on their schedule that if they don't, I think that they actually need to improve. They need to get better, or they could go 5-7 again. They've got the schedule that could produce 5 or 6 wins.
Yes, but you can have the same record as last year, but play better.
Oh, sure.
I think that's Texas A&M. I think if they go 5-7 or 6-6, well, everybody will be able to say they played better than last year. Because I just don't see how they could play much worse than they did last year.
Okay.
So, let me ask you, Mark. Out of all the Colorado versus TCU game, that was surprising to me because I actually think Colorado has a legitimate chance to beat TCU.
Well, I don't know what we have in Colorado. That was my point. That was my point about their second game taking on Nebraska. That I think while we search to find out who these teams are the first couple of weeks of the season, that is going to be multiplied by 10 with Colorado.
Right, but TCU is also losing Max Duggan.
Sure.
So I feel like he was a pretty significant factor to why they won a lot of close games.
He was more than a significant factor. Yes. He is being replaced by a quarterback who beat him out for the starting job, though.
I get that, Mark, but just because he got beat out by him doesn't turn out he'll be a better player than Max Duggan.
Nope.
So, or even be comparable. There's players all the time that get a starting job that turn out not to be as good as the backup quarterback. So, which one of the games you've seen so far surprises you the most of what the line is?
Surprises me in terms of a line. I would say that nothing really surprises me. I just think that in addition to the Colorado wild card status, I think that Nebraska is in the same boat. Not to the Colorado extent, but that game intrigues me the most because I think both teams are the biggest just X factors out there. I can get a better estimate on how good these other teams are going to be, more so than I can Nebraska and Colorado.
Well, I think Miami of Florida and Texas A&M have both bad cultures. Nebraska has a losing culture, in my opinion. So hopefully, without Scott Frost there, that losing culture goes away.
Yeah, you kind of wonder what happens there because with Scott Frost, obviously he did a poor job. The coach previous to him, Mike Riley, didn't do a good job. But he also had a season or two that were winning seasons. He had won in the past. I don't know if a coach comes in and a coach the caliber of Matt Rule and comes in and is able to turn that around pretty quickly, or it's some long, arduous process, kind of like it was with Florida State and Mike Norvell, where it's going to take a few years to really weed out guys that don't buy in and change that. I'll use that word that you just used, culture, get it turned around.
Yeah, for me, if Nebraska goes 7-5 this season, that'd be a great success for them. Even if
Yes.
they do that for 2 years in a row, that'd be a tremendous success for Matt Rule because at least it shows stability in a positive direction. I feel like it's been a very long time since Nebraska's had that.
Yeah, I'll have to check out their schedule again. But I do think that 7-5 is possible. Of course, it's possible. I think it's highly possible. And yeah, that's a huge step in the right direction. I think that there are a lot of 6-6, 7-5, 8-4 teams every year where I think that's the sweet spot of teams that are either not very good or on the brink of being really good. Because if you look at those particular teams, there are some of them who are just better than the garbage in their conference. They're just better and they win all those games. And then they run up against the best teams in their conference and they're losing by 40 points. And they're so far away from challenging. But there are some other teams that you'll find out there 7-5, 8-4 range that are really good and they're beating the teams they're supposed to beat. Maybe they lose to somebody, they get upset, but other than that, they're challenging and they're competitive with the best teams in the conference and they're showing us that hey, maybe there's hope, maybe next year's the year. I think there's a lot of variance in that middle pack right there.
Right. And going off that, Mark, I've given you some teams that I think can increase or decrease their wins by
Yes.
3. I'll give you another one, okay? Missouri, 9-3 or better this year.
Oh, really?
Yes, Missouri.
Are you saying that because you've looked at the schedule or you really believe in what they're doing?
I really believe in what they're doing.
Okay.
I believe in Eli Drinkwitz. And last year, they had 2 games. Auburn, which let's be honest, they should have won if they would have just held on to the ball. And then Kentucky, when I doubt anybody watched Kentucky, Missouri, but Kentucky muffed a punt and they ran into the kicker and it cost them to get a first down. So that should have been 2 wins for Missouri, but it counted as 2 losses.
Okay.
So right there's our 2 wins, and I think they're capable of upsetting somebody decent. Not one of the top teams, but a South Carolina type team from last year, an Ole Miss type team.
I think they're playing Kansas State. They played Kansas State out of conference last year, and I think they've got another game with them. I'll find out here in a second.
Yeah, they lost to them by 28 last year, which,
Yep.
was pretty bad, but we didn't know what Kansas State was at that time. And I doubt Kansas State will win the Big 12 again and be as good as they were last year.
Unless Texas takes off and becomes the best team in the Big 12, of which I think they're capable of doing, I don't mean just winning the conference. I mean showing we're definitely the best team in the Big 12. Other than them, if they don't do it, I don't know who's going to be in the running for the Big 12. It's just a smattering of decent teams.
I agree with that completely. That's why I just think it's incredibly hard to go back to back. So,
Yeah, so Missouri's got that Kansas State game. They do play them at home in week 3 after they should already be 2-0. They've got a tricky non-conference game against Memphis. That's going to be played in St. Louis. Okay. They're going to play there at the old Rams Dome, their home field. And then in the SEC Western Division, their 2 opponents are LSU and Arkansas.
Missouri can beat Arkansas. They can beat Arkansas.
They could. Wow. I just, man, 9-3. Listen to this run of games. LSU, Kentucky, South Carolina, bye week, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida, Arkansas.
Okay, there's 2 games in there for sure I think are losses, which is Georgia and LSU. Every other game I could see Missouri winning. Now,
Tennessee?
Does that mean that's going to happen or it's going to be easy? No.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think Missouri right now is a better program than Florida, for example. I think they're better than Kentucky. I think they're on par with South Carolina.
Okay, so you're taking Missouri over Florida, whom they had the same record as last year and they lost to, and then against a Kentucky team that had a better record and has had a better record every year for how long? A long time. And so you've come to the decision that Missouri's better than both of them. I don't know what that's based on.
It's based on my belief in Missouri being there. I believe Eli Drinkwitz is in his 4th year.
Yeah.
If that's correct. So this is the year they've kind of been building toward.
Okay.
And I don't trust Graham Mertz at Florida. Just flatly don't trust him.
Okay. I would not be shocked by that because I think all of those teams are relatively in the same range, but give me Kentucky. Give me Kentucky. You know, we talked a little Kentucky yesterday, and we'll post that video here pretty soon. But you've got an exciting little offense there with Kentucky, with Devin Leary coming in, tons of wide receiver play that's back.
Oh, yeah, we're going to throw the ball this year. At least that should be the plan. So,
well, they should be. Yeah.
Yeah, we got Liam Cohen back at offensive coordinator as well. So that should be exciting.
And you picked up the Vanderbilt running back who tore you up last year.
Yeah, he ran for 1,000 yards at Vandy. So he's probably pretty good. Hopefully, that'll be a revenge game for him and all of us Kentucky fans. Kentucky cannot lose to Vanderbilt in back-to-back years more. That just can't happen. I mean, that would be an embarrassment.
Yeah, because that kind of confirms things, that it wasn't a fluke.
Right. That's basically the equivalent of Kansas would have beat Texas twice in a row. I mean, it's just horrendous. But Mark, that's all I got for you today. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you being here. Have a good one. Now, Kansas has defeated Texas multiple times here in the last decade. They just didn't do it 2 in a row. So Texas has been embarrassed by Kansas multiple times. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate everybody being here. We have dropped the show link in the chat. And also want to keep running down these games. So Florida gave Tennessee a decent game last year. I don't believe this game was quite as close as the final score. They're in the swamp trying to pull off an upset. Joe Milton, a quarterback for Tennessee, of course, with Hendon Hooker gone. Tennessee loses elite wide receiver play. Cedric Tillman gone. Jalen Hyatt gone. Florida, of course, Anthony Richardson gone. And as the real MVP mentioned, Graham Mertz, probably going to be the starting quarterback for Florida. 6.5-point favorite is Tennessee on the road in that one. And here's another one of these home and home series that I mentioned a few minutes ago that we are coming on the back end of. So we're seeing a rematch. It's funny how things turned out for both of these teams because the time that they played in week 3, Michigan State was the favorite. Michigan State, well, actually, to correct myself, technically, I don't believe that they were the favorite at Washington, but they were only a 2-point. It was a pick'em game, basically. But Michigan State was the number 11 team in the country. Washington was coming off a 4-8 season. Nobody really gave Washington much attention. And it was all Michigan State. Mel Tucker doing a remarkable job. 11 wins, top 10 finish. And Michigan State goes out there and gets just bloodied. Like, this was the Michael Penix show, just tearing up their secondary. But it was also Washington being just a bigger, badder, more brutal football team, beating up Michigan State. Peyton Thorne running for his life. And it was truly a game that was not as close as the final score. Well, we got the return trip. Washington comes to Michigan State. The odds makers have adjusted after Washington continued on from that performance to go 11-2, beat Texas in a bowl game, and finish in the top 10 in the country. So they are, in 2022, the Michigan State of 2021. Michigan State regressed to 5-7. Another one of those teams that we talk about that went from one end of the spectrum to the other. A 3-game difference. For them, it was a 5-game difference, 10-2 to 5-7. So Michigan State at home as a double-digit underdog. Then we've got a little backyard brawl action. And this game's going to be played the third week of the season with Pitt and West Virginia. Of course, the Mountaineers went to Heinz Field last year. Pitt won a nail-biter in that one, and now Pitt coming off a 9-4 season, bowl win against UCLA. Phil Jurkovec at quarterback coming in from Boston College, taking on the Mountaineers. And this game in Morgantown, West Virginia, a 1-point favorite. Ohio State, Notre Dame, look at that line. That's a little healthy. Buckeyes won at home 21-10 against the Irish last year. Of course, Tyler Buckner was the quarterback. We expect Sam Hartman be the signal caller this time around. Ohio State's going to have 3 weeks to get ready and get their new quarterback, probably Kyle McCord, maybe Devin Brown, ready for the big matchup against Notre Dame. So they're going to have 3 cupcakes to get ready. Well, it's Indiana, and it's 2 non-conference games for Ohio State before they take on the Irish in South Bend. Last time the Buckeyes went to Notre Dame was in 1996. Won that game, I believe, 29-16 with Joe Germain and Stanley Jackson and Pepe Pearson and company. All right, that same week, the ACC powers that be have moved up the Florida State-Clemson matchup into September. There's talk that they want the loser of that game to be able to recover to still be a viable college football playoff candidate. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just the dynamics of the new schedule for the ACC as they abolish the divisions and they go to a 3-5-5 model. And this is one of the matchups that Florida State and Clemson will, despite the lack of divisions, will continue to play every year. Florida State, a 3-point dog on the road at Clemson. Of course, Florida State lost again to Clemson. So that would be how many consecutive years? 2015 through 22. That's 8 consecutive years minus the COVID year they didn't play. 7 straight wins in the series for Clemson. Reasonably close game this past year, but not razor close. Clemson in control, held off a late Florida State rally, onside kick, won the game, of course. Cade Klubnik at quarterback, trying to establish himself. Jordan Travis was in that situation 2 years ago. He's really grown over the last 2 seasons, and now he is a Heisman candidate. Texas, Oklahoma. Sooner fans had to cover their eyes last year. 49-0. And even though Oklahoma has been the much better program ever since Texas went to the BCS championship game in 2009, we know that this game has been typically an Oklahoma win, but by 1 score. The year before was the Casey Thompson matchup against Spencer Rattler and the coming out party of Caleb Williams at Oklahoma, coming back from 4 touchdowns down to win. And then, of course, again, Texas just annihilated Oklahoma. And that the down point, the low point of the Oklahoma season under Brent Venables, is they finished 6-7, their worst season since 1998. 5-point favorite is Texas. No home field in this one, of course. They play at the Cotton Bowl at the Texas State Fair, Texas, Oklahoma. Final time as Big 12 combatants. They will move this one to the SEC, and if the SEC didn't already have enough marquee matchups, they add one here with Texas and Oklahoma, Dylan Gabriel and Quinn Ewers. And if Texas is able to knock off Bama in week 2, especially on the road in Tuscaloosa, they will come into this game with all sorts of hype. Oklahoma's big non-conference game, and then I searched through the Rolodex up here through the schedule, and no big non-conference games for Oklahoma this year. Shame on them. It's like Tulsa and somebody else. All right. USC Notre Dame, of course, this is the last time USC will play Notre Dame as a member of the Pac-12 as they move to the Big Ten. We'll see if that affects the scheduling of this game as these two get together. Of course, this is the greatest cross-sectional rivalry in college football. And SC won by 17 points at the Coliseum last year against Notre Dame. Notre Dame has had the upper hand in the series during the Clay Helton era, but now, of course, Lincoln Riley in play. USC a 3-point favorite at this point. Much will change, of course, before they go to South Bend. Notre Dame has those 3 marquee matchups against Ohio State, Clemson, and USC this year. We've got major matchups in the Big Ten on the same Saturday. Penn State lost 2 games last year to, of course, Ohio State and Michigan. Blown out by Michigan, played Ohio State close, won the Rose Bowl in convincing fashion. Penn State, Drew Aller at quarterback, going to Columbus to take on Ohio State. 8 points on this one. Ohio State given a little bit, maybe too much credit for being who they are and not necessarily who they project to be. Michigan State, of course, the Wolverines, a much better team and program at this point until proven otherwise. Back-to-back Big Ten champions. Won the game before the fisticuffs ensued in the tunnel. Won the game against Sparty last year, 29-7. 15-point favorite as it stands right now, Michigan State. Then we move on to the largest outdoor cocktail party with Georgia, Florida. Dogs a 17.5-point favorite. Actually got a bit of a challenge from the Gators last year before dusting them off in the final 5 minutes. Gators need to rebound. I don't know if they've got it in them this year. I think it could be another rough ride for Billy Napier. Looking for a quarterback, looking to supplement a lot of losses from that roster. LSU, Bama get together. We know what happened in Death Valley. Final play of the game, LSU pulls it off with a 2-point play. I believe that was Mason Taylor with a game-winning touchdown or 2-point conversion reception. LSU, Bama this time in Tuscaloosa. Tigers, 8.5-point favorite. Underdog. Of course, the Tide's the favorite. Michigan, Penn State get together in Happy Valley. Michigan just bludgeoned Penn State last year. That was a complete rout. Penn State stayed in the game into the third quarter based on fluke plays. Michigan buried them. They go to Happy Valley, and of course, Penn State wants to show that they can play with the big boys in the Big Ten, as they have not had a good series against Ohio State. Of course, they've only won once under James Franklin, and they were trading wins with Michigan for a while, but of course have lost the last 2. Kansas State and Kansas get together. How about those Jayhawks under Lance Leipold? Jalen Johnson at quarterback. He missed some time, and they still picked up wins and looked pretty impressive for most of the season. Lost a stellar of a bowl game against Arkansas, 55-53. Kansas State, 3.5-point favorite on the road as we get into November. And, of course, the Jayhawks defending their Big 12 championship. Georgia, Tennessee. Of course, Tennessee was contending for a college football playoff appearance, lost their first game against the Dogs convincingly. They get the rematch in Knoxville as a 7.5-point dog at home. And then we wrap it up on the final weekend of the season. And the only game released by FanDuel for that big November 25th rivalry weekend, Ohio State and Michigan. Wolverines won it 2 years ago by 15, won last year's matchup by 22. J.J. McCarthy's back outside of Ronnie Bell and Olu Olubatimi. Mozzie Smith, a few players on defense. Michigan is primed and loaded. Ohio State has some question marks. Offensive line, secondary, quarterback, of course, and just a 1-point underdog on the road. So a neutral site game between Ohio State and Michigan would make the Buckeyes a 2-point favorite. And then like a 5-point favorite in Columbus. Still, Vegas still loves Ohio State. And yes, as John is reminding everyone, we will be talking Michigan football live with all of you at 5:30 Eastern over on the Michigan channel. Catch us there. Clint is reminding us also that Michigan has solved the problem of the tunnel issue. They're widening the tunnel. Tired of losing fights on the field? Only Clint can really say that. Clint would be the only guy around in this chat, I would think, that has a right to pile on Michigan because, of course, of the playoff game. Folks, please like the video. It helps the algorithm. Please just take that split second to like the video. Subscribe right here, the Voice of College Football. Is anybody listening to me who is not subscribed? We would love for you to subscribe here. If you enjoy the content and want to continue to come back and talk college football with us each and every day, we hope that you do. And please subscribe. Share it with a friend as well. Well stated, John. People are projecting losses for Ohio State this year, and I understand it. Michigan looks like I still don't think they're the most talented team or roster in the conference, but the best team. And then, of course, Notre Dame, that's a road game. Penn State's going to be intriguing. Are they going to churn out another season that's typical to James Franklin, 9-3, 10-2, lose to the big boys, or are they ready to break through as they did somewhat in 2016? Mike, yes, I made it through Oreo madness and 34 double stuffed Oreos and 3 glasses of milk, 3 sizable glasses of milk. That might have been my downfall right there. What was the milk? If I would have had those Oreos with water, even though that would not have been a pleasant experience, it might have been more sustainable. All right, folks. As soon as I saw that FanDuel had released the betting lines for this season, a very early version of the betting lines to most of the big games, well, I thought, hey, let's jump on here. Let's get everybody's thoughts. And I certainly will share mine as I just did. And Amazon link in the description section of all the videos, folks, please. Yes, wet blanket. I went with the double stuffs as well. So I got to be given some credit for the milk consumption and the double stuff. Because if it truly is double stuff, which, come to think of it, it looks more than double stuff, but I don't believe it is. I would take them at their word. If anything, you would think that they would peel back a little bit on the actual double stuff and just advertise it as double stuff and not actually double the stuff. But I think they do. I think that's a pretty legit double stuffed cookie. Twice as much as the classic Oreo. And so 34 of those, and I was out. That was it. And it was not a pretty sight for about an hour. Didn't feel real good for about an hour. Then the body just bounced back, just boom. I thought I was going to be hurting like all night. I thought until this gets out of me, I'm going to be hurting all night. But yeah, it felt like garbage for an hour, and then just bam, it was there. David did not join us, did he? David, you joined us for a little while, didn't you? Did you dunk your Oreos? I prefer to dunk my cookies. Well, you should have been around for a very different style of approach that I have. It's unique to me. Not saying that nobody in the world does the same thing, but I don't know that anybody really showed me, taught me, that I copied this from anyone. I can't imagine, but I've been doing this forever. I don't do either. I don't not dunk the cookie, and I don't dunk the cookie. Yes, I do what I do for a couple different reasons. Processed sugar could kill you. Yes, there's a lot of studies out there that I think are pretty substantiated at this point that anything processed is not the best. Yes. Should not be living on processed food. I've lived too much on processed food. So that's changing, but that was a one-time deal. And yeah, 34 cookies is probably roughly about 15 more than I typically consume. So that was a bit much. That was a lot much. All right. Well, appreciate everybody being here. I guess nobody else has anything else to say about the odds coming out. But again, I wanted to run down. Congrats. I don't know if that's necessarily something I should be congratulated for, Roger Dodger, but I appreciate the accolade there. All right, we've got Michigan Football Talk, Michigan Live at 5:30 Eastern with yours truly and a cast of thousands, most notably John Dre. And our special guest tonight is going to be Isaiah Hull of Wolverines Wire. That's at 5:30 on the Michigan channel. Then we've got Florida State Live at 6. And then that does it for me, at least based on what you guys can see for the rest of the night. I've got some special announcements coming up here very soon. Good stuff coming up in terms of content delivery to all of you. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you in a few minutes over on the Michigan channel. Yes, Mike, Isaiah's coming on. Go Blue. Ugh, that came out of my mouth. I'm just reading the comment, of course. Some of it, those comments that come out of my mouth don't always come from the heart. Yes, need to produce more videos. Why don't I say this? Yeah. Why don't we go with this one right now? For anybody out there, especially Ohio State, Michigan fans, but anybody else, you know what? We're going to open this up to any fan base. Of course, any fan base out there. If you have any comparisons that you would like to make. So, for example, comparing Ohio State's recruiting over the last X number of years, let's say during the Jim Harbaugh era, to Michigan's, the Ohio State-Michigan recruiting comparison since the Jim Harbaugh era started at Michigan. That would be like, for example, one idea we could do. So if you have any ideas that you would like to bring to the table, any requests for matchups that you would like me to make a comparison series, I will take off on that. So let me know. Leave the comments in the comment section, not here because these are going to go away, but in the comment section of any of the videos, any comparisons you would like for me to make. and we will make them. And otherwise, we will see you in 90 minutes on the Michigan channel for Wolverines Live.